The presenting sponsor of today's episode is the Skill Up Workforce Training Program, powered by Registrar Corp. Skill Up provides a modern, flexible solution for workforce training. Leverage the highly interactive e-learning library in your existing platform, or tap into Skill Up's full-feature LMS for more modern training, validation, and documentation. Learn more at registrarcorp.com/skill up. That's registrarcorp.com/skill up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Food Safety Matters, the podcast for food safety professionals. I'm Stacey Atchison, publisher of Food Safety Magazine, and I'm joined by my co-host, Adrian Bloom, our editorial director, and Bob Ferguson, president of Strategic Consulting. So, how are you guys doing? I mean, Bob just slid in from the airport.
I'm still coming down to altitude right now, so yeah.
We were very optimistic that he could get off a plane and make it to the microphone in an hour. I don't know what we were thinking. Anyway, it does feel like a long time since we've recorded an episode. I don't really know why, except for life just feels like dog years these days. So, or maybe I just missed you. I think that could be it.
Aw.
You know? Aw.
Yeah.
Right. So, Adrian, you want to officially get us started by telling everybody a little bit about today's interview?
Yeah, so today I'm doing a deep dive on food safety culture with two food safety professionals working in FSQA and operations and what it looks like when company culture prioritizes food safety. And this discussion centers on Fresca Foods, a Colorado-based co-manufacturer of natural and organic foods, and the people who help set the tone for food safety culture. It's a really hands-on discussion about what works and what doesn't, so stay tuned for that interview.
Yes, as usual, a great discussion. So I don't really have too much housekeeping, today. Just another reminder, save the date for the 2027 Food Safety Summit being held May 10th through the 13th in easily accessible and affordable Rosemont, Illinois. So put that on your calendar. You'll be glad you did. And just like that, this is the fastest ever. I feel like we're in a little land speed race or something. I don't know. For some news. Now for some news.
Okay, so our first story today looks at two recent studies examining ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, and their relationship to human health. So a new review that is published in the American Journal of Public Health in July claims that ultra-processed foods may not simply be associated with poor health outcomes because of their nutritional composition. Instead, the researchers suggest that many UPFs possess characteristics that resemble those of addictive substances and may be intentionally designed to encourage overconsumption. So the review was authored by researchers from Deakin University, Drexel University, and the University of Sao Paulo. They argue that UPFs are often engineered to deliver unnaturally high concentrations of refined carbohydrates and fats while minimizing fiber, protein, and water, creating combinations rarely found in nature. These products are also frequently formulated using industrial processing techniques and additives that alter food structure, texture, appearance, and flavor in ways that increase palatability and eating speed. The review highlights evidence suggesting that UPFs can trigger behavioral and neurobiological responses that mirror those associated with addictive substances. The researchers also cited studies estimating that approximately 14% of adults and 12% of children may exhibit signs of addictive eating behavior related to UPFs. They also pointed to evidence linking UPF consumption with increased risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, depression, and premature mortality. The authors argued that focusing solely on individual responsibility is unlikely to address the issue and called for systemic interventions, including restrictions on marketing practices, improved food labeling, taxation policies, and reforms to food environments that encourage healthier eating choices. So these conclusions align with findings from a separate study published in PLOS Medicine, which explored whether food processing itself may influence health outcomes independent of a product's nutrient profile. In this study, researchers analyzed dietary and health data from more than 200,000 participants in the UK Biobank and compared foods using both the NOVA processing classification system and nutrient-based assessments. So that study found that individuals consuming diets high in ultra-processed foods generally experienced higher rates of cardiovascular disease, cancer, and all-cause mortality. Importantly, some UPFs classified as having relatively favorable nutrient profiles still showed associations with adverse health outcomes. The researchers suggested that factors beyond nutrients alone may contribute to health risks. Potential mechanisms discussed in the study include changes to food structure during processing, the use of certain additives, altered digestion and satiety responses, and interactions with the gut microbiome. At the same time, the authors cautioned that not all ultra-processed foods are identical and emphasized the need for more nuanced approaches that consider both nutritional quality and processing characteristics when evaluating health impacts.
Well, they got my attention at all-cause mortality. Now we just need to know what they're talking about. They've certainly got my attention.
So I'll make one comment on this, and I always like to point out the fact that anytime you talk about these things, it's gray. There's no black and white here. It's not going to turn out when all the research is done that these foods, because they're processed, are going to be all bad, and these, because they're not processed, are going to be all good. I don't think it's going to work out that way. The one thing that neither of these studies really addressed is things like the calories and overeating. This one study did talk about the fact that appearance and texture and flavor in ways that increase palatability and just make you eat more of these things, and having snacks around all the time. And that clearly has other health outcomes, particularly things like diabetes or pre-diabetes, and then you have weight gain and all these other things. It seems to me it's going to be hard to define this, but the outcome ultimately is going to be linked to some of these other things that are not being brought up here, like what's actually happening to the people who are eating these processed foods, and maybe that's what's causing some of these adverse health outcomes. And it's an indirect way of having the problem, not necessarily a direct relationship to the processed food. So if you ate very few processed foods in not very often, you would not have these outcomes. But the fact that it does cause more addictive eating may be an indirect outcome.
Well, and so you're saying processed, and they're, ultra processed, right? So like we all know the difference between, I know the difference between, broccoli and a frozen dinner.
Right.
But I don't necessarily understand the difference between what might be some processed food versus something that is ultra processed, and what those ramifications might be when they've changed the structure so completely that how your body reacts with it changes dramatically. I don't know. And
yeah, I think you're spot on about that. Things like, if it is the type of ultra process that makes it digest quick, which causes jumps in blood sugar and things like that, I think that's absolutely parts of some of this. But it's the increase in the blood sugar and the constant increase in the blood sugar that causes the health outcomes from eating these. That's where I'm getting sort of an indirect relationship there.
Well, and I would agree with you too, Bob, that black and white, it's hard, but we'll see if there is a definition. I'm sure there'll be lots of argument about the definition when it comes out, but at least some kind of guideline about things that we might be able to look for.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing that was troubling, and I'm not sure which one of these articles, because I know it's a combination of, that they were using there was another article that Bailey posted, and I don't know if it was included in here, that they were actually using stuff to get people kind of addicted. Yeah. Using almost tobacco company, tactics.
Oh, yes. That information was in this article. So,
Right.
When you read the article link in the show notes, go to that, because the article that Bailey produced for this is really interesting, contains lots of data from 2 different studies, and kind of a comparison of what's being discussed here about the addictiveness of these foods, and kind of going back in the history when the tobacco companies purchased some of the food companies, and kind of on and on.
And then we have some ideas here.
Yeah. And I guess one thing that I wonder, just, in relation to the actual studies, and when you're looking at, when you're trying to measure data like this, is that, how are other lifestyle factors possibly playing into this, right? Because are we looking at people where you have one group who's consuming a lot of UPFs, right, and has the same level of, fitness, sedentariness, or activity, the same, do they do things like smoke? Do they drink a lot of alcohol?
Exactly.
Do they live in areas with high pollution? All these other things that environmental and lifestyle factors, right? Are they looking at people, are all other things the same, but one group is eating a lot of ultra processed food, or is it not so evenly weighted in that way? And so because I think when you're looking at things like, cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular health, there are so many things, there are multiple things that can play into causing those health conditions. It's not just from eating food. Probably it's also food and having a sedentary lifestyle, or food and, high alcohol consumption, or whatever it is. Right. So I think that's kind of a question that, and perhaps the studies themselves have a little bit more in-depth notes on the methodology. I'll have to dive back in and see if I can find if that's clarified in there. But I guess that's one thing that I wonder about when we're looking at the health effects of UPFs.
Yeah.
In these types of studies.
Yeah, and socioeconomics as well. Right. Because some of these foods are cheaper and easier to come by for, working families.
They last longer. You don't have to shop every day. These can sit on the shelf for a week, right?
Yeah.
Stacey, I have a question for you. Am I allowed to hug Adrienne? I mean, we work together. Am I allowed to just give her a hug?
Did I just say something you liked, Bob?
That's really.
That was brilliant.
It depends, right? Yeah.
So if I remember right, both of those, neither of those studies.
With consent.
Right. I know I have to ask first. That's right.
Yeah.
Neither of them were randomized human studies. They were both studies of studies, and they looked at data over time. So one of the things that's always a shortcoming to some of these studies is they're self-reported on what people are eating. And I think it's well known in those kind of self-reported studies that people don't tell the truth about what they're eating, or don't always remember. We talk about this with recalls, where where the CDC or someone will come and say, "What did you eat over the last 2 weeks?" And people say, "Oh, I don't remember what I ate over the last 2 weeks." So now you're saying the same thing for nutrition. But until the CDC started using shopper cards and things like that to actually get data, then they did know what people are eating. I don't think that comes across in these studies either. So there's always that issue with these kind of studies as well. But that comment was spot on, that we probably will never know that. We probably won't know that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I think, too, with self-reporting things. Like, when you go into your doctor's office and they ask, how's your diet? When you think about your diet, you're probably going to think it's a little bit better than maybe it actually is if you take every single thing you eat and then tally it all up and look at it. You think, well, I eat a lot of salads, and I eat a lot of good lean protein, and I, do this and do that, and my diet is varied. And when if you would actually write down every single thing you eat for a month and then go back and look, you'd be like, oh, there were some donuts in there, quite frequently, or, whatever, things like that.
And alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
I've been in rooms where that's been underreported.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. But anyway.
I have a comment on that, but I don't want to completely hijack the discussion.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try this and we can decide if it stays in. There's a funny Saturday Night Live skit where one of the guys goes to his doctor, and the doctor says, how's your alcohol consumption? He goes, I'm probably up to 5 or 6 a day. He goes, 5 or 6 beers a day? He goes, oh, we counting beer too?
That's pretty good.
A good one.
So, yeah. So what people actually tell their doctor is exactly.
Yeah. Or report for a study, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so from one thing to another, in other news, the World Health Organization has published updated estimates of the global burden of foodborne disease, providing the first major update since its landmark 2015 assessment. As you heard Dr. Elaine Borghi discuss on the special World Food Safety Day episode on June 7th. Now, so according to the WHO, 42 foodborne hazards caused approximately 866 million illnesses and 1.52 million deaths worldwide in 2021, a burden similar to that from tuberculosis, HIV and AIDS, or malaria. The agency estimated that contaminated food was also responsible for the loss of roughly 1.57 million disability-adjusted life years, which is a measure combining years of life lost due to premature death and years lived with disability. So specifically, chemical foodborne hazards were estimated to cause 6.26 million illnesses, while microbiological hazards causing diarrheal illness were attributed to approximately 666 million illnesses. And invasive enteric and parasitic disease hazards caused an estimated 1.94 million illnesses. So positively, the burden of foodborne diseases has been trending down since the year 2000, but children under 5 remain disproportionately affected. Although they represent only a small percentage of the global population, young children accounted for approximately 1/3 of foodborne disease deaths and a substantial share of the total disease burden. Diarrheal diseases caused by pathogens such as norovirus, Campylobacter, non-typhoidal salmonella, and E. coli continue to account for a large proportion of illnesses, along with toxic heavy metals like arsenic and lead. WHO noted that the greatest burden remains concentrated in low and middle-income countries, particularly in Africa and Southeast Asia, where limited access to clean water, sanitation, healthcare, surveillance, and food safety infrastructure contributes to the elevated risks. So in 2021, the 42 hazards also resulted in productivity losses of $310 billion in nominal terms and $647 billion after adjusting for purchasing power parity. High-income countries accounted for just under $108 billion, and low-income and middle-income countries accounted for $202 billion. And if you recall, WHO also previously estimated that for every $1 invested in food safety infrastructure, we could reap $46 of return on investment in the form of public health value. So I think a lot of these statistics really support, what we're looking at with the burden of foodborne disease and how that's transformed since the 2015 statistics were released.
This study is fascinating. I did go in and read it a bit, and something didn't quite stick with me right. I was reading through this, and it didn't make a lot of sense that these numbers would be down 30% in 2 decades. It seems like we would have made more progress. And so luckily for a numbers geek like me, WHO also published on their website as part of this, an interactive dashboard where you can go through and look at all the different studies. And I noticed, and Adrian, you mentioned this, that with the chemical causes versus microbiological causes. So I went through and I took a look at the data on lead and arsenic with 73% of the total fatalities, which is a pretty big number.
Yeah.
WHO calls this out as an estimated burden higher than any other hazards. And the fatalities due to arsenic and lead went from 51% of fatalities to 73% of fatalities in 2021. Now, the reason for that was not necessarily that the arsenic and lead numbers were growing. It's that everything else was dropping and the arsenic and lead numbers weren't changing at all. So that's what was happening. So when you start digging into that, the other thing about this is that it's largely concentrated in India and in China. And I looked at a 2026 NIH report about arsenic and lead. It's coming from both natural sources, but also industrial sources in the soil and in air pollution and things in those 2 countries. And they also tend to accumulate in rice, which are staple foods in India and China. So it is a significant public health issue, but one that is regional and unique from the other foodborne illness categories. So overall numbers of fatalities are down 31% from all causes, But if you remove those due to arsenic and lead, because it's a special case the way I'm looking at this, the total fatality numbers are down 63%, and the total fatality is down to 400 million versus 1.52 million. So most of this problem, a big piece of this problem, is this lead and arsenic issue in 2 countries.
My
At least,
eyes are
at least with
really
fatalities,
big. And in
yeah,
rice. So, I mean, so does that mean it's ultra processed?
I don't think so. No, I think this is one where sometimes you and I talk about things like smog and those type of environmental things. I think what you have here is an environmental issue in those 2 countries where if they would have better controls, you would probably not see this problem as much, which again is a different problem from microbiological food safety issues and the other issues that they have as far as what they counted here. But it seems to be fairly unique. And if they could control those pollutants, you wouldn't have this. And the fact that rice happens to bioaccumulate those, I don't know what else rice bioaccumulates, but they did say that it bioaccumulates lead and arsenic. And again, most all the fatalities, and I only looked at the fatalities because frankly, they're easier to measure. But because of that, most of the fatalities, a big percentage of them are coming from that particular situation.
Wow.
Which I thought was good. It's bad news with that particular issue, but it's good news that rather than seeing that fatalities are only coming down a small number, they're actually coming down quite large, a quite big number, which makes a lot more sense to me that we've made progress in other areas, but just not in that one area that's pretty well flat.
Well, in typical human fashion, of course, I'm thinking about myself. And rice is kind of a staple. Now, obviously, I don't eat as much rice as they probably do in China or Japan or even in India, but I make the choice to eat imported rice because, well, sorry, Lumberg, I don't like buying California rice because I think, what are we doing with all of it? We have limited water resources. Why are we flooding good farmland in California to grow rice? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So go to the source. But now you got me thinking, do I need a COA on my rice products? Is buying organic enough? I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, the one thing that might be on your side is this does seem to be regionally limited to India and China, at least from
where they're having the fatalities.
From the extreme example, yeah.
Well, anyway, I kind of digress. I digress greatly to make it personal, but it does point to, well, difficult decisions around food, but for people who can't make those decisions necessarily, right? And they're held captive to environments, and again, the greatest burden remains in low and middle income countries.
One other thing I'll mention real quick that the authors also mentioned is they changed the way they measured long-term cardiovascular disease. So something that takes a long time, decades to manifest itself in somebody, but they changed the way they measured this, which added to the burden and added to the number of fatalities. So one of the other reasons why the numbers don't seem to be improving as fast as they could have is they changed some of the measurements. So if you really wanted to look at a particular cause, you'd have to go and take that other data out as well.
Wow.
So next up in news, FDA has released additional details from its investigation into an infant botulism outbreak associated with ByHeart powdered infant formula. The outbreak involved Clostridium botulinum contamination identified in a batch of formula produced at ByHeart's Pennsylvania manufacturing facility. The outbreak was declared over in late February, with 48 infants falling ill in 17 states. FDA conducted extensive inspections at both the Pennsylvania facility and the company's Oregon facility as part of its investigation. According to the agency's root cause analysis, environmental contamination likely occurred through several contributing factors. Investigators identified deficiencies involving sanitation controls, environmental monitoring practices, equipment design and maintenance, and the management of manufacturing environments intended to control pathogen risks. The agency reported that Clostridium botulinum was detected in environmental samples collected from the Pennsylvania facility. FDA also identified concerns regarding moisture control and the potential for harborage sites that could support pathogen growth and persistence. FDA emphasized that powdered infant formula is not a sterile product and therefore requires rigorous preventive controls to minimize contamination risks. Following the investigation, ByHeart implemented multiple corrective actions, including facility upgrades, enhanced environmental monitoring, equipment modifications, sanitation improvements, and strengthened preventive control programs. FDA said that lessons learned from the investigation may help inform industry-wide efforts to prevent contamination in powdered infant formula manufacturing.
This one's is an interesting case because of what they found and what they haven't found. But one of the things I'm looking forward to, and I noticed, was added in late into the IAFP meeting in New Orleans into the agenda, was a 90-minute session that's being chaired by Mark Carter, who's the past president of IAFP. And he's going to have individuals from IEH, which is the lab that was part of this, ByHeart, Martin Weidman from Cornell, and other people are going to be going through this, some of the latest data on this case, step by step, I think, in New Orleans. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
That's going to be SRO.
Yeah,
that's going to be a packed room.
I think it will be.
Yeah.
And before we go today, federal and state investigators are continuing to examine a multi-state listeriosis outbreak linked to Requesón, a soft ricotta-style cheese that has sickened 9 people in Maryland, New York, and Virginia. 8 patients have been hospitalized and 1 person has died. Notably, illnesses associated with the outbreak occurred over a period of more than 3 years, with patient samples collected between March of 2023 and May of this year. The investigation gained momentum after New York health officials identified 2 related illnesses in the same family and traced food purchases to a retailer in Brentwood, New York. Testing detected Listeria monocytogenes in Requesón cheese samples, and whole genome sequencing showed the strain matched the outbreak strain found in patients. Traceback efforts led investigators to Maryland-based Clover Hill Dairy, where an unopened 18-pound bucket of Requesón also tested positive for the outbreak strain. In response, Clover Hill Dairy recalled its Requesón and soft ricotta cheese products, and the Maryland Department of Health suspended the company's operating license pending further evaluation. FDA says the investigation remains ongoing because there's not yet enough evidence to determine whether the recalled products account for all illnesses linked to the outbreak. And I believe that since we initially reported on this story, Clover Hill Dairy has now recalled all of its cheese products. So clearly, this is becoming a bigger investigation.
All right. Well, thank you, Adrian. And thank you, Bob. And as always, there are links to all the articles that we've referenced in our show notes. And if you don't already, we invite you to follow us on our social channels, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for Food Safety Magazine. And to take a deeper dive into all the great content we offer, visit our website, food-safety.com. And while you're there, register for a free membership. And this will give you unlimited access to the website, a free subscription to the Food Safety Digest, our twice-weekly newsletter that keeps you up to date on news, and Food Safety Magazine feature articles, videos, podcasts, monthly webinars that Adrian expertly curates and arranges for us. They're fantastic. Videos, I already said that. Videos, podcasts, monthly webinars, everything. So sign up, join us. You'll be happy you did. All right, so now it's time for Adrian's interview with Miguel Ramirez and Madisen Hodgson. Miguel Ramirez is a seasoned food manufacturing executive with over 3 decades of operational leadership experience in the food industry. He currently serves as Vice President of Operations at Fresca Foods in Louisville, Colorado, where he's held progressive leadership roles over the past 13 years, spanning plant manager, director of operations, and his current VP role. Prior to Fresca Foods, Miguel spent over 24 years with Butterball, where he managed more than 12 production lines across a 2-shift operation with a workforce of 350 employees. Known for championing food safety culture at the operational level, Miguel brings a rare perspective to food safety conversations, that of a senior operations leader who understands that food safety and operational excellence are not competing priorities, but deeply interconnected ones. Madisen Hodgson is a food safety and quality assurance professional with nearly a decade of progressive experience spanning food manufacturing, retail bakery, beverage, and airline catering environments. She currently serves as a quality assurance manager for a protein and nutritional bar manufacturer in Denver, Colorado, where she oversees the full food safety management system and leads a multi-shift QA team across multiple production lines. Madisen holds a master's degree in food safety from the University of Arkansas and carries certifications including PCQI, SQF practitioner, HACCP coordinator, and CPFS. She's passionate about building strong food safety cultures, developing food safety professionals, and bridging the gap between regulatory compliance and practical operational food safety. And after a very quick break, we'll hear their discussion. The Skill Up Workforce Training Program, powered by Registrar Corp., contributes to a strong workforce culture and food safety culture through highly interactive training set in a virtual food manufacturing facility, featuring a steady cast of characters in real-world scenarios that your employees face. The simulations and narrative storytelling build rapport and understanding with your teams. Learn more about Skill Up, including its AI-powered course creator for facility-specific training at registrarcorp.com/skill up. That's registrarcorp.com/skill up.
So in today's interview, we're doing a deep dive on food safety culture and what it looks like when company culture prioritizes food safety. And here with me to discuss this very important topic are Madisen Hodgson and Miguel Ramirez, who both have work experience at Fresca Foods. So welcome to the podcast, Madisen and Miguel.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So exciting.
Great to have you both here. And I know that Madisen, you're a longtime listener of the podcast too, which is very fun. So thank you for that. So, I kind of want to jump in right now and ask, when we're talking about defining food safety culture in the context of food manufacturing, I'm curious, how would each of you define that? And, how has that definition evolved over the course of your careers? Madisen, maybe you want to kick us off on this one.
Sure. Yep. So I think kind of how I would go about it, like kind of the nerd food safety research, I have it, the definition is like shared values, beliefs, norms and that affect mindset and behavior towards food safety across the organization. But I think how I feel it as like a food safety QA manager is you could feel it. It's you could tell when you're in an organization where you have leadership that cares about it and cares about echoing, right, like food safety concepts and kind of directives and echoes it across departments. It's not just left in the QA team. It's having somebody in other teams, right? And especially in leadership for me, it's if your leadership gets it essentially and cares about food safety culture, they're going to speak on it it's going to be present in everything that they say, like in every in every meeting and every kind of they're gonna lead with that and they're gonna mention it. It's gonna come up and it's gonna be kind of a core part of the topic, I think, for me, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just what you said, like being reinforced at all levels of the organization. And then also, just kind of that feeling of, it when you see it and when it's working well. Totally. I agree. And Miguel, what's your take on this? How do you define food safety culture? And, how has that definition, changed or evolved for you over the course of your career?
Yeah, just a little bit of context, like about my career, how it has evolved. Like I started before HACCP was adopted by USDA in 1996. So in 1998, we went HACCP, and I could see the changes going from end of product inspection to preventative science-based preventative food safety controls. And adopting those, and really for me, and seeing, learning and understanding and passing that to the associates on the line. And to this day, how I take the pulse of that is when I walk the lines, I talk to the associates every day. And because every day we have different situations, but I can tell if, there's buy-in from the associates on that, because there's nothing, there's always going to be, there could be frictions between operations and quality when there are conflicting priorities. So first of all, we need to align on those. That way the message can be absorbed, right? And how it's presented and how it's taken. I think that is so critical to build on that culture of food safety. It's so critical to make sure that we have the right metrics and that we are working on those, together. That's the main thing. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you said about, how, with your work and your career, you've been doing this since before things like, HACCP principles being adopted by FDA and like, solid definitions for food safety culture were even established. But then, you were there when those things did get established, and you know how to translate those into operational, like on the floor, concerns. And so I think that's really interesting, and certainly you've seen a lot of evolution in some of these topics throughout your career. Now, another question for you is, as vice president of operations at Fresca Foods, how do you operationalize food safety culture across teams? And, especially when you're looking to balance production demands with food safety priorities.
First, providing clarity on standards and our what is that we're measuring and why, and for the teams to take ownership. It's all about ownership. Getting away from a system or a culture or compliance. To me, that's one of the biggest impact on food safety, because they're not waiting for somebody to give the approval that product is ready to go to market. But they are the ones, by owning that process, that giving the approval. This is something that I will feed my kids, my family. And I think it's so critical. That's the way I see it. And I love to give those to take on those conversations when something comes up on new teams or with the teams, whenever there's training or something. I love to participate on that because I want them to hear it from me also, that this is what we're all about. These are our values.
Yeah, I like what you said about having that ownership mindset, and also, how, successful food safety and food safety culture, it isn't just about compliance or checking the box. I mean, obviously you need to comply with the things that need to be done, but when you're only focusing on that, we need to pass an audit, and, we just need to make sure all the boxes are checked. But, I mean, it's that kind of mindset, I think, it doesn't necessarily help companies realize, their true potential in these areas. And so I appreciate your comments on that. Now, Madisen, during your time at Fresca Foods, what specific practices or behaviors stood out to you as indicators of a strong and effective food safety culture?
Yeah, totally. So that's also kind of why I wanted to have Miguel with me on this, because of course I'm QA, he's operations, so you can imagine we've certainly disagreed before and maybe butted heads, maybe, but like I always could come to Miguel at the end of the day and say, I just really appreciate his the way he respects food safety culture, because I can come to him and say, hey, here's what I'm going through, here's what I'm thinking, here's my perspective, and he gets it, and he's like modest. Miguel, food safety culture to me is leadership. The top level leadership needs to be driving this, and that's what Miguel does, is like he is on the floor telling the team, hey, Madisen has observed this or that, or, QA has called this out. What are we doing to do this? How are we, it very much feels like a partnership together. So that's why, sorry, forgive me, if I'm not answering your question, but yeah, it's a little bit unique for me, like with how Miguel is he is a VP, but he's on the floor. He knows everyone's name. He knows, and he is checking, and he knows what needs to be happening. And I can say, hey, Miguel, I'm struggling with XYZ in a QA standpoint, and he'll say, okay, well, hey, let's coach the team, and he gets on the floor and he owns it and really emulates that. in himself on the floor with the team. And I think that's helpful. That's really great leadership. That's helpful, because you could feel on an island in QA sometimes. And then so just to have QA, especially to have operations high leadership backing you and on the floor saying, no, we have to do it this way. It's very helpful. It's very much more effective, right, than just QA being the ones to say, please do this. So,
Yeah, I love what you know how you emphasize the communication that's so important, between, the quality and safety team and the operational team. And I also like, how you spoke about, Miguel, that kind of are that bridge between translating corporate priorities into and balancing those with operational realities, right? Like that's a really important role there, and it's great to hear, Madison, that you think so highly of Miguel's work in that area. And we've been talking a little bit about how important these messages are to be embraced by leadership, and also to come from leadership. That kind of top down, like pervading throughout all levels of the organization. So that kind of leads into my next question, and I'm wondering if you can both share examples of how leadership, visibility, and engagement can influence employee behaviors and accountability around food safety, and specifically at Fresca Foods. Miguel, maybe you could speak to that first.
Yes, whenever, one of the we encounter situations, um, I think being there and stay calm and ask the right questions and really like my style is like no finger pointing. I like to look for the facts, and then from there, so we can solve those, whatever the issue might be. Um, and trying to stay, more on the proactive aspect of it. It can be from pieces of equipment, processing. I'm a very I love a structure, process control. Um, I think training our teams on that, it help us prevent a lot of issues, because we get a lot of associates that probably have never worked on an industrial environment. It's probably the first jobs in manufacturing. So let alone, learning all the different standards, quality, food safety, because they learn, I have a saying that says, if you people think this way, that if you're going to measure my performance and how many cases I produce, get what I'm going to be doing.
Right.
Now, but if you change that to you're going to measure my performance and the quality and the food safety on my job, then that's what they'll do. So that's why so the message and how it's framed is so important.
Yeah, I agree. And, I mean, that just speaks to the reality of, ultimately we're responsible to the consumer, right? The consumer is really our boss. And so, what you talked about, when addressing issues, remaining calm, not playing the blame game, things like that. I think that's also serves to keep that idea of we are responsible to the consumer in mind. So I appreciate your comments there, Miguel. And Madison, I'm curious about your take on this too. How you see leadership, visibility, and engagement influencing employee behaviors and accountability around food safety.
thanks. Yeah, totally. I was thinking like, I always kind of try to coach my team of like technicians, which QA technicians, which maybe they're kind of new to the industry, and in QA it's a unique job, right? So you kind of have this power, but to me, I'm always like trying to say we work for production. So like we need to I guess I'm trying to say my main thing is the associates, like the production team, they want to do the right thing, and we're here to give them the tools. Like I think a QA tech, they it's easy to get in and think, oh, they just are they're trying to, do this to spite me, and I disagree, but it's easy to kind of feel that way. And I think, well, my point is, the associates do want to do the right thing, and like I think we as QA need to be there to help make it as easy as possible to do their job safely. And then uh my point with leadership, like I just think Miguel has been like very huge in that. as a high up leader, like saying like, no, helping back it up. So it's not just coming from the QA team, it's coming from all sides, like all departments, especially high up. Like I think that's important. Frankly, yeah, I do think that's the only really way to get the whole team on board, essentially, or to ensure that the team knows that like what their efforts to do things properly is important and it will matter and it will be heard and accountable. And then sorry, forgive me. But yeah, Miguel is always really helpful bridging that gap for me. Like I do feel really the associates here are awesome and they do want to do it right. And I think it's sometimes it's a pretty large we're co-man, so it's pretty large and it's spread on buildings, and so it's hard to like have that face-to-face relationship with the associates that I would like to have had. As QA, Miguel's very good at it, and he makes an effort to do that, and I think that's just really important. But having that's my point is having Miguel back up food safety like talking points and on what we're really wanting to focus on. It's just so helpful. It really drives it and it yeah drives it home that it's really important.
Yeah.
And then if I may, operationalizing quality, that's something Miguel taught me. Like one of the things when I was here, it was like really a huge challenge to kind of what that means is like kind of moving the checks from just QA doing the monitoring checks, but having both QA and production. And I was thinking like, how's this going to happen? And I had a meeting with my boss and Miguel was like, at first I thought no way, but he kind of really motivated me. He was like, no, but it worked, and we just did it, and then the culture changed, and people started to see like this is important. Now I see why I'm doing these checks. I see why this matters. And Miguel really like lifted my spirit that day because it was felt like how am I gonna kind of do this on such a large scale? But Miguel was like, no, we can do it. So I think that's culture. That's really helpful coming from the VP. That really was cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, interesting, this story about, involving, more than one department in being, doing specific activities related to food safety and quality and, kind of almost that second set of eyes, kind of principle. And it sounds like, it was something to, it did take a little bit of time to implement, but it ended up in some really great results. And to have the quality team and the operations team, really invested in ensuring that, these pivotal things were being taken care of, sounds like it
Together,
was
totally.
yeah, a really good opportunity too, to get the sides always talking, right? Again, we talked about that importance of communication. So I think that illustrates that there. Now, Miguel, I want to return to something that you spoke about a little bit earlier, and that was moving from that, kind of compliance or checklist-based mindset to a true culture of food safety. And I'm curious about your opinion on what are some of the biggest challenges that you think companies face when they're trying to, move from one mindset to a true culture of food safety, and how can those barriers be overcome?
I think it needs to be across all levels. There's because they cannot be at the leadership level. They cannot be. They gotta understand there is a process because we had that we are not running at the run rates because we got changes. Maybe we need to add more people, and so our cost is going to be different. So having that understanding, and I think being part of the values here of Fresca makes a big difference. I don't have to think about it. We know that's what we do because we got the training and really we don't like box our people, our teams. If somebody learns more, we say we got a promotion for you because that's the we going to scale their skill levels, their technical skills, so they can obviously they get in a different position. But I think that's done across all the different. And the other thing that I hear in my tenure here is that it doesn't matter the size of the customer, because we do for a very small customer and we do for very large CPGs, and we do the same for all of them. It doesn't matter because our standards are the same. And I think the teams on the floor, they see that and they understand. And understanding the why is so critical. Why are we doing what we do? So we got to spend time. Got to spend time, and every opportunity we have to coach, we need to coach.
That's great. And, Madison, what are some of your thoughts on, the importance of, moving from that sort of compliance checklist-based mindset to, really embracing a true food safety culture?
Yeah, totally. I think kind of I was thinking about it when Miguel was speaking, like something I had here working here was I have access to everyone. So it's to where I feel very heard,
Mm,
which
hmm.
is wildly rare a little bit, I would say. And just as a QA manager, that's often not not how you feel. But I truly, like, I was thinking about times where Miguel would be in a meeting and I would hand him like a sticky note saying like, hey, here's,
Uh-huh.
let me know if you need this, but like the fact that I have this relationship with Miguel and like he will back me up on stuff where I'm like, hey, we're I don't know, XYZ, issue is happening and we need to kind of really focus on it. And Miguel will have my back and he'll not only if I say it and he'll back me up, but he'll say it in other meetings. And like when it comes from him, it's just very valuable, I found. And yeah, stuff like that. And then, well, we would do, Miguel invited me to, there we had like a weekly production meeting for his production team, the supervisors, and then I would come and show some slides of a food safety incident of just like, hey guys, this is what we're looking at today, and it was just like really lovely. And it was fun to get to sh interact with them and show them, hey, here's what we're looking at. Keep an eye out. And Miguel was always just really a huge, I don't know, fan or just really felt on my team. And it felt like we were getting to somewhere. And it was like, that's helpful. I just think, leadership, it doesn't seem like much, but it goes a very long way, especially for QA people. It goes a long way just to say, yeah, this matters a lot, team. Like, we're gonna focus on this. And he would start the meeting out with me doing my presentation. I made a slide, and then that really, and then I would, interact with the team members afterwards, and they would kind of ask me about it, and it was awesome. It started the conversation, and we really got somewhere with it. So I just think the leadership it's just so huge that it can't just come from QA, it can't just come from the technicians, and even if just the floor level team is so involved, but the top leadership isn't, it doesn't carry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just really loving all the, what I'm hearing about the communication and the coordination between different departments, to ensure that food safety and quality standards are always being met and always being improved. Now, that kind of leads into my next question. So, Miguel, how do you measure the effectiveness of your food safety culture initiatives? And, what kind of indicators or feedback mechanisms do you rely on to ensure that you're always looking at continuous improvement across operations?
Yes, so that's another thing that since Madison was here, we created KPIs, joint KPIs that we own it together. I think that's the key. And we have like a first pass quality. How many we have, where we got trans, so we review it today, as Madison was talking about our Thursday meeting, operations meeting. Yeah, it's going to start here in 19 minutes. But it's run by the supervisors now. They speak, they talk about their areas, but one thing that doesn't change is human safety goes, and then food safety, and then each percent, and then now it's just our, the way we talk now, but it's just creating those things, customer complaints, working together. We're doing a lot of kappa training for to the lead person level, so we can do investigation, understand what might be a problem and what could have caused the problem, just to have that, to enhance, to scale, really scale the technical skills, the skills We really focus a lot on that, but we own it. We do it together. We do creation for Madisen as well. We do walks in the different rooms. We do GMP walks. We do facility walks, and but we do it together. It's not like any of the teams in a vacuum, and it's so critical because we have conversations, we talk, we debate sometimes. Yeah, is that really needs to happen or not? But it's just having that collaboration, that communication is very, very important.
Yeah, I really like hearing about how food safety responsibility is not siloed at Fresca Foods and how important that is. And, what you said about having those joint KPIs, I think, aside from being an effective measure of, how food safety culture initiatives are doing, but also, kind of echoes what Madisen said about those joint checks, right, between quality and operation and both being accountable and responsible for that. So, yeah, I mean, just the coordination and the joint responsibility and the joint execution, I think, is something that certainly contributes to the success story of Fresca Foods. Now, Madisen, so having experienced food safety culture at multiple companies, what do you think differentiates an excellent culture from, an average or even ineffective one in practical day-to-day terms?
Oh, totally. I mean, kind of what I don't know, my thesis of it is with the GFSI scheme, like I love it that we've added food safety culture as like a auditable element. But I feel like I was a little bit I was like, well, okay, let's have that be more specific, I think, because I think we need top leaders, they give us that's kind of what I laid out in my research on this is like they say, okay, top leadership needs to own this, this, and this, right? But there's no check on that. Like, there's no audit on that, and there just never has been. And well, I wonder if there will be. I think that needs to be kind of lined out a little bit better. For instance, hey, top leadership, you need because it's pretty vague. What I'm trying to say is like, for instance, SQF code or just like any of the GFSI codes, I kind of compared all of them and it's like they claim very strongly top leadership needs to own food safety culture because of course we all know that, right? But how do you audit that? When an auditor comes in, they're not asking the top leadership how are you doing this, right? They're asking the QA manager who's in the audit, right? Or the director, right? So I just felt I feel like that sh could be we should really audit that if we're going to put it in a code. But sorry to, I hope I'm not derailing. But because it's very vague and like QA, we're used to reading the code and like kind of figuring out, okay, what does that mean in terms of like, what policy do I make and what records do I have to do to kind of comply with this? But I just culture is hard. It's hard to kind of capture. That's why it's like very interesting to me, but it's very important. It's so of utmost importance. Forgive me, I forgot your question. How do I compare it? Well, because like Miguel just like owns that. Like so, sorry, forgive me. It's what I was trying to at Fresca, you can say I could go and see, something going wrong. I working at Fresca, I could go to Miguel and say, "Hey, Miguel, I'm like kind of struggling with this. Like, I've done this and that, and to kind of communicate this issue, and I'm not really feeling successful in it." And he will act. And like, to me, I think that's just so huge to have like top leadership care about, hey, here's what I'm seeing, and just being able to like be heard by operations at the top level is just huge and kind of rare. I don't know that I've experienced that necessarily in other places. Like, and I could tell, I've worked in a multiple kind of environments in manufacturing where I'll tell my boss this and that, dealing with X, they don't want to hear it a little bit. Like they don't, their eyes glaze over when I start talking about the food code and the, and the like food safety plan. And here's what I need to do. I have to validate XYZ. They're like, okay, yes, 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 just do it, go. And um, yeah, I found with Miguel, I can say, hey, here's what I'm going through. um, I need your help. I need you to help me get I need you, what's your advice on how do I kind of speak to the team to say this, I mean it, like we really have to do XYZ, we've had this audit and how should I coach them? What's the best approach kind of deal. So I found that such a difference, like being able to work closely with high level operations who care and want to be involved versus not. You could tell when they don't want to be involved and they've not been on the floor in months. Whereas Miguel knows everybody's name on the floor, every single person. So that's the difference. I think that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it just speaks to, again, the, the pervasiveness of responsibility and importance placed on food safety and food safety culture throughout the organization, coming from, the top down and Miguel certainly being, reinforcing that and, doing that at both the higher corporate levels and then the operational levels, the people on the floor, the people who are directly working with the product, right? So that's so important. And Madison, also, I wanted to add, you talked a little bit about GFSI, and we know that they just released a updated culture of food safety
Yeah.
kind of framework. I think it'll be interesting. Well, at the time we're recording this interview, they have recently released it. You'll be hearing this interview a little bit later down the line, but I think it'll be interesting to see how companies take the things that they outlined that are supposed to be more measurable components, right, in this
Right.
version 2.0, and how that's implemented in, the day-to-day operations at food processors. So certainly a lot of new material to work with there. And hopefully it does kind of help companies make the kind of slightly vague concept of food safety culture more of a measurable reality, right? So,
Totally.
yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah. Thank you. Because if I may, that's like my main, I really would love that. Like I love that we added food safety culture to the code. It's like, okay, let's go. Let's really measure it because I do think there's something to measure, but I worry that we don't audit it and we should. We really should. Like, it's top leadership. They say it in the code. Let's check. I just think it's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely interesting. And it's interesting because in Europe, for example, it is an auditable, like part of the, companies are graded on it. There's things that they have, certain things they have to meet in order to pass inspections, what related to food safety culture. So, yeah, it is interesting, and I think these things are going to continue to evolve here in the United States as well, and we're going to see it being a more active, integral part of, you know things that companies need to do to meet certain criteria to continue operating at the highest level, right? So yeah.
Mhm.
But so I guess to kind of wrap up all the things we've been talking about today. So looking ahead, how do you both see expectations around food safety culture evolving, and particularly with increasing regulatory scrutiny, as Madison just talked about, and an industry emphasis on accountability and transparency? Madison, since we were just kind of talking about this, maybe you can lead us off on this question, and then I'll invite Miguel to answer as well.
Thanks. Yeah. I'd love, I mean, obviously, I'd love to get obviously like more Miguel's. I I'd love to see like the auditing it. Like I'd love to see, for example, SQF is what I've kind of the scheme I've been under mostly. I'd love to actually ask top leadership. I want to hear what they have to say about it, not just because I wrote in my paper like QA kind of does it on behalf of them, and I really want to hear what the top leadership has to say about it, and I want to hear the auditor ask them. I don't know that that's that hard. I don't know. Maybe that's a lot, but I really want to know that the top leadership is being audited against this scheme, against, this code element, because I just haven't seen that yet. So
Hmm.
it feels like, come on,
Hmm.
like ask them, they're here and it's their facility. They should be, and we're supposed to, as the QA professional, right? Like as this QF for that example, we're supposed to update them every month and additionally, when, if there's anything that's changed that would affect the food code, or sorry, the food safety plan, it's like I want to really hear that the top leadership does know and does care. That's kind of something I really would love to be audited. I don't think that's too much to ask. Yeah.
And, Miguel, what's your take on this? How do you see expectations around food safety culture evolving and, looking at that increased regulatory scrutiny and the industry emphasis on being more accountable for these things?
Yeah, I think I'm totally agree with Madison. I think we got to up our game because not only that part, but our customers are so much more savvy, much more demanding in food safety and quality. That is, and our customers too. They're so much more educated in our conversations we have. Like I participate like on scoping new customers and new clients, and it's just the questions and what their expectations are. It's really pushing us to get better, which is I love that. As I always say, there's not I never had a bored day here at work. It's always exciting, but I think it just keep us going, because we have a process now. We have a system that is is generating results. So, some of the important things that I think, from a leadership alignments, we got to be as leaders, we must be present, show up, and reinforce that we own food safety together. That's, I don't know, how else to say it, but that's it.
No, that's great. I think you said it very well. And, I think throughout this whole talk that we've had today, there's some things that just really stand out to me about, the importance of having a culture of continuous improvement and the importance of communication and coordination. And I think that, it sounds like all those things Fresca Foods does really well. And it's been so interesting having you both on to discuss, how the company does what it does well and the importance of food safety culture to operations, to the QA team, and, ultimately to who you answer to, which is customers and consumers, right? So thank you so much, Madisen and Miguel. It has been fantastic having you on today, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with our audience.
Thanks, Adrienne. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Our pleasure.
Thanks again to Miguel Ramirez and Madisen Hodgson for joining us on the podcast today. And a very special thanks to this episode's sponsor, the Skill Up Workforce Training Program, powered by Registrar Corp. Skill Up provides a modern, flexible solution for workforce training. Leverage the highly interactive e-learning library in your existing platform, or tap into SkillUp's full-feature LMS for more modern training, validation, and documentation. Learn more at registrarcorp.com/skillup. That's registrarcorp.com/skillup. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening. We love hearing from you, so please never hesitate. Send us questions or suggestions to podcast@food-safety.com or post a note on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, or Instagram. We always love getting your feedback. And to make sure that new and bonus episodes magically appear in your podcast player, all you have to do is click that follow or subscribe button in the player of your choice. Presto bingo. All the episodes, many episodes appear. And while you're there, please throw some stars our way by rating the podcast, especially if you liked it. It only takes a moment, and it's good for everyone. And that's it for us today. Our next regular episode will post on July 14th. In the meantime, take good care of yourselves and those around you. We'll talk to you then.